Hi guys, welcome to the world of Python. My name is Odida, and in this tutorial we are going to learn the basics of this powerful programming language. But before we get started, these are the things we are going to cover in this tutorial. So we'll cover introduction to Python, where we'll discuss an overview of the language and its history, as well as its uses and popularity in various fields. Then we'll go through the steps required to install Python in your system. Then we'll look at variables and data types in Python. So we'll give an explanation of how to create and use variables in Python, as well as the different built-in data types such as integers, floats, and booleans. So we'll also look at operators and expressions. So we'll look at an overview of how different operators are available in Python and how to create expressions. Then we'll look at conditional statements. We'll give an explanation of how and when to use if-else statements in your program. Then we'll look at loops, while loops, and everything that involves iteration of data. Then we'll look at functions and how to create and use functions in your Python programs. Then we look at arrays and array lists, strings. Then we'll look at file input, exception handling, additional libraries, and how they can be used with Python. So I hope you are ready to dive in. Let's get started. The first thing we'll do is look at how to install terminal, and for that I'll just bring a browser window. So I'll just do a Google search of Python, and we'll be taken to this website, python.org, and in python.org we'll get to the download, and here we can download the latest version of Python, which is Python 3.1. So there are instructions on how Python can be installed on various systems, but since I'm on Windows, I'll be able to show the Windows version and the easiest way to do so in Windows. So on Windows, I'll open the Microsoft Store. In a second. Then I'll look for Python. There is a list of packages depending on the version. So here I have got Python 3.1, 3.9, 3.11. So you can select any version from this list, and you can install just the way you install on any other application. So application distribution software, for example, App Store and Play Store. So assuming that is done, we'll also need a code editor, or an IDE. So a code editor is where we'll be writing our Python files. So for that, we'll go to VS Code. Then on this website, code.visualstudio.com, we can get Visual Studio Code for any platform. So there is a macOS version here, Windows, and also Linux. So you'll just install Visual Studio Code the way any other application is installed, and I've already had that installed. So you can, when you launch your system for the first time, you can go to the terminal, and on the terminal you can access the terminal by using control and backtick or tilde. So typing Python on the terminal if it throws an error, it means that you don't have Python installed yet. So here we are good to go. And also, to make things a little bit easy, let me just move the camera out of the way. We can install So in order to well support Python in Visual Studio Code, we need to install a few Visual Studio Code extensions. So we can access the extensions store by pressing on the settings icon on the top left corner. Then we can click on extension, or we can also use the shortcut Control Shift and X from anywhere in Visual Studio Code. So we'll just click on extensions, then we can search for Python. This will add Python support to Visual Studio Code. So you can see that I already have this one installed because it's saying uninstall here, but when it's installed for the first time, it will be, before it's installed, it will be installed. So you'll just install that, and we'll go back to our folder, and we'll create our first Python application. So the first thing to do is to print hello world as in any other platform. So we'll come here and create a new file. So it will be a Python file, and we can click on the file. We can click on Control S. I will be asked where to save it, so I'll save mine as script.py. You can use any name as long as you select Python file, or it ends in .py. So, and I'll also press on this icon to minimize that and have more space. So in Python, to print to the standard output, you just type print in all lowercase. Then inside the print, it takes a string or an integer or any other data type. So I'll pass a string for now, which is hello world. So to pass a string in Python, we can use double quotes, or we can use single quotes. So I prefer double quotes, so hello world. And when I save by pressing Control S, it's important to note that the print has to be lowercase, and access my terminal again. So again, I can access my terminal by going to the menu and clicking on new terminal, or I can just use control backtick and access the same terminal. So the file path to my Python file is in documents. So I'll just navigate, change directory to the next, and to change directory on terminal, I'll just cd to change directory, then access documents. By pressing tab, it will autocomplete the names to make it a little bit easier. Then after that, I'll run this application by typing Python script.py. So you type Python followed by the app name, and we get the words hello world printed on the output. So we can also create a variable. A variable is basically like a storage unit for data. So a variable can be something like message equals, and we assign it to a string as long as we have the double or single quotes before the word. It means that it's a string variable. So I have hello world here, and Control S to save the file, and I can now access the hello world by referencing the message. So when I come back and say print message and save, it's important to note that when I add single or double quotes to this message, it will become a string, and we don't want the string, we want the value for this message. So I'll just leave it the way it was, and when I'll comment out this print by control and slash. I'll also save so that you only have one print message on the console. and when we print this one, we'll already printed this the message. So I did clear my screen, but previously we did have this message equals to hello world, and we did say that the message is a variable. So we'll look at variables in Python. So in Python, variables are used to store values. A variable is a given name to a memory location where a value can be stored and later retrieved. To create a variable in Python, you simply need to assign a value to it using the assignment operator. So in this case, the equal sign is the assignment operator, and we'll give an example, a different example. So in this example, we'll have x, so the variable x, and we'll give it the value 5. Then using the print function, print, remember, is what we used to print to the console. So when we save that using Control S and run the code, python script.py, we get 5 on the console. So we've stored the value 5 on the console. So this creates a variable called x and assign it to the variable called x and assign the value 5 to it. When we call the print function and pass the variable x, it will print out the value 5 as we've got here. Then in Python there are different built-in data types that you can use to store variables. So apart from int, this 5 is an integer. We also do have just switch files to Linux, int, and this one stores integers. Then we have float. Float stores floating point numbers or decimal numbers, and an example can be 1.22. Then we have str for string. String is what we had previously in the hello world message, where we can wrap a sequence of text with the single or a double quotes. So here hello world, and also we have boolean represented by bool. So this one is something that is truthy or falsy. For example, false, which is falsy, and true. And ideally that's how we present this one. Ideally that's how we represent booleans in Python. So we'll come back to our Python file, and we'll create a few variables. So we can create a variable to represent variables to store information about a certain person. So we can have the variable age to have the age of this person, so the age can be 30. Then we can also have weight, and this person weighs, for example, 75.5 kg, and that is a floating number. Then we have the person's name, using the assignment operator. We can have John. Then is student, we can have true. So a student has got this underscore, so that it becomes more readable. When we remove this one, for example, it will become less readable. So I'll just return that one. And true is also a special keyword in Python to represent boolean variables. So we can have true, or we can also have false. And these ones are case sensitive. They must start with capital letters. So a student, I'll get it back to true, and I'll now print the type of variables. So to get the type of a variable in Python, we use the type function, and the type takes the age. The type takes the variable that we want to. For example, here we can get the type of age, and so that we can see what we get from the type. When we check the type age, we can print everything by wrapping it in a parenthesis and calling the print function with that. Then we'll save our file, and when we run the script, we can get that it's a class and it's of type integer. So we have got this int here on the. So now we'll look at operators and expressions in Python. So in Python, operators are used to perform operations on variables and values. There are various data types in types in Python, which includes let me just get myself out of the way. Arithmetic operators. We have examples: the plus, then the minus, then we have the asterisk for multiplication, the slash for division, and the modulus operation to get a remainder. Then we have comparison operators, for example the double equal sign, or for to compare if things are similar. Then we have the exclamation, then equal sign to check that values are not similar. Then we have the less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than. Then we have logical operators. For example, we have and, or, not. Then we have identity, which is or is not. Then we have membership operators, which is in, for example, in and not in. So for example, if you have an array and you want to check if something is inside that array, you can just use in or not in. And we'll look at the examples in our script file. So the first example of arithmetic operators, we have the plus. So x, we are assigning the variable x to the value of the operation between 5 and 2, which is an addition. So Python will add these numbers together and store the value in the x file. So when we just comment out everything below, comment out, control slash, then save the file. When I now run the file, I get that x has got the value 7 printed. Then if I uncomment the next line, I'll just which is y is assigned the value of 10 minus 4 using the minus. So Python will evaluate this expression and give us store the results in y. When we print y, we should get 6, and when we run this, yeah, sure, we get 6. I'll just comment that one once more. Then multiplication, I think it would be better to just show everything else together. So I'll uncomment everything and run the application. So the first value is 6. Our first operation is on line number 8, which has got the variable z. Z is assigned to 2 times 3 using the asterisk, which is the multiplication sign operator, and 2 times 3 gives us 6. Then we have comparison operators. We want to compare if 5 and 5 are equal. So, and we assign it to the variable a. When we print that, we get true. So here's the true. Then 5 is not equal to 6. That's also true. 5 is obviously not equal to 6. Then we have logical operators, see, true and false. So when something is true and false, it automatically defaults to false. So we have false here. Then 22D is true or false. So because it's either, so meaning that it could be there. So this one will obviously come to true. And that's it for operators in Python. So next we'll look at conditional statements, and in Python conditional statements are used to control the flow of the program based on certain conditions. So the most commonly used conditions are if, then elif and else. So if something can tell the program to do a certain task, then we have elif, which is also short for else if in other programming languages. Then we have else. Then the if statement is used to check the condition is true. The code block for if else statement is as follows. So here is an example of if. So we'll have 5, we'll assign it to the variable x. Then if x, because now x references the value 5, if x is greater than 0, print x is positive. So when we print to the console, when we run the application, we get x is positive on the terminal. Then we can also add other operators, elif, which is short for else if. It is used to check for multiple conditions. So for example, you can have else if x is less than 0, prints negative. So if else is less than 0, x is negative. So when we save and run that, we get x is positive. But when we change the value of x to -1 and run the same application, we get x is negative because it's now less than 0. And also in Python, the indentation is very important. For example, in blocked code. So in other programming languages, for example, if I was to have a JavaScript file here, if I was to have JavaScript to scope my code, I'd use if x is greater than 0 and add curly braces to tell the code that what I want to be evaluated in this if, what I want to run when this condition is evaluated is what's between these opening curly braces and these closing curly braces. In Python, to achieve that, you have to indent your code, so you have to space. Ideally, you can use 4 space, or you can just use tab. So single stroke of tab to get that, and we can add multiple. For example, we can do nothing here, and when we save, because it's also scoped to this one according to this indentation, when we run this code, we still get okay, let's give it 5 as it was before and run. We get this other message printed. So the next one is else. So the else statement is used to catch as a catch-all condition to execute the code if none condition is met. So we'll come here and look at else. So if this condition is not met, the first condition is not met, then the second condition is not met, which is on the elif. We'll run the third condition. So we'll have our else, then we can print x is 0. And to just demonstrate this, I'll come and change the x to 0, save our file, run, and we sure have x is 0. So this one didn't pass, this one didn't pass either, and now this one passes, and that's what is printed. So if else statements are used to, it's just giving instructions to your app to do this and do that depending on the conditions that you have. So loops in Python. So for example, when you want to repeat a block of code, so in Python, loops are used to repeat a block of code multiple times. So there are 2 types of loops. We have for and while loops. So for loop is used to iterate over a sequence of items such as a list or a string. So for example, we can have a list of fruits. So fruits can be mango, banana, and apple. And we can use the for keyword, so for fruit, and loop through the fruits list. So for fruit in fruits, we can just print the fruit. So for every fruit that is in this list, the fruit will get to print the fruit, and when we run the code, we get to see that this code prints each item in the list, so one fruit at a time. Then for a while loop, so I'll just replace my code here with a while loop. So we have our variable x equals to 0, and as long as x is less than 5, so in this case 0 is less than 5, we should print x, so we should print 0. Then we are also having this other type of code, which is x plus equals 1. Remember that x plus 1 equals to, we can have x plus 1, so when this code executes for the first time, it will be 0 plus 1, which is 1. Then we can have x plus 2 plus 1 for the next time, so eventually it will reach 5. So as long as x is less than 5, we should get to print x. When we run the code, we get the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because this code runs multiple times until x is 5, so as long as x is less than 5. So it is also important to be careful with loops, while loops. If the condition is always true, it will be an infinite loop, so the loop will never break, and there should be a condition that has to be met in order to break the. Then also you can use continue to skip the current iteration and move to the next one, and additionally you can use the zip function to iterate over multiple sequences at once, and the iter and next functions to create controls on your operation. So we'll look at an example on that. So we'll look at functions in Python. In Python, functions are used to organize and reuse code. A function is a block of code that can be executed multiple times by calling its name. Functions can take arguments, which are also called parameters, and return values or nothing, just do a task. To define a function in Python, we use the def keyword. So def, then followed by the function name. So for example, if I wanted to greet, followed by the function name, then we have a set of parentheses to include the arguments and a colon. Then the rest of the function is indented, which means that it's blocked. So def greet, then we'll take the name of the person, then we'll have our colon, then on the next line we'll just print hello, and using the plus operator, we'll just add the two, so hello and name, and we'll invoke the function. So this defines a function called greets. It takes one argument, which is name, and prints out a greeting. You can call the function by using the name, by typing the name. So for example, here I'll have greet, then the name is Brian, which is a string inside the parentheses. Then I'll save, and when I run my code, you'll see that it prints hello Brian. So I've actually made this reusable block of code. I can also greet another person without typing the entire function. So for example, greet Victoria, and on running this code I'm able to print Victoria too. So function can also return a value by using the return keyword. So I can have a function, I'll just rename this one add. So add takes in two arguments, so argument of type A and B, and it just returns A plus B. So return A plus B, the sum of two letters. Then when I come here, I'll just call the add function 1 and 2. I'll also call the add function 1 and 5, and I'll also call the add function 8 and 9. When I save this one and run the code again, I should print whatever I return so that I'm able to see it on the terminal. So I'll wrap everything in a parenthesis and call the print function. Print is one of the built-in functions that come with Python. So when I run the code, 1 plus 2 is 3. That's for the first one at line number 5. Then 6 and also 7. Then we can also assign the return value to a variable. So for example, I can have here x variable x equals to add 1 plus 2. Then I also have y equals to then z. I'll just remove this one. Then I'll also print the result of add x and y. So we've added these ones, assigned it to x. We've added these two, assigned it to y. Then now we are printing what we'll get if we add x and y. So when we run the when we save the file and run the code, we are able to get 9 because the first expression is 3. Of course, the next is 6. 6 plus 3 comes to 9. So that's what you need to know about the basic things you need to know about functions in Python and how to use them.